Welcome to Workplace Village. Today's topic is breaking the silence, menopause, work and wellbeing. And I am so thrilled to introduce Gary Cosier, internationally recognised psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, coach and mentor, and a former Australian professional cricketer.
Thank you so much. 300 years ago, Kathy.
Still relevant. Great. Yeah, and I guess in the topic of what we're trying to achieve here in terms of attracting males to the audience, I'm so thrilled that you've joined Workplace Village. And I really, really want to thank you for being a partner of the Workplace Village, focusing on the topic of menopause and the impact it can have on the workplace. So let's get started. I'd love for the audience to know a little bit about Gary Cosier.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. All right, I've been, I guess I've got a couple of roles in the workplace anyway, and one is as a psychotherapist and clinical hypnotherapist at the Shift Clinic. And then I do my coaching stuff. I do usually involved at an executive level, tending to work with workplaces that are a little difficult, maybe executives who get stuck in their progress through the organization. And then a couple of years ago, I was asked to come and mediate in some workplaces where there was some specific issues with one of the employees in both these workplaces, and these employees were struggling in that area of menopause and how it affected her in the workplace and how it affected those around them. And then I got to see the other side of it from a clinical perspective at the Shift Clinic. And then I was allowed to see from the lady clients that I spoke to, how they felt, and what they were experiencing at this time in their life. And that was a really valuable insight to me, and quite rare, I think, for a male to sit opposite a female who was struggling with her biological changes, and which also got them to explore the other parts of their lives that also became in question to them. So it's a really interesting space, that what happens outside work and what happens inside work, and it's difficult to sort out, but it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And if I can kind of just take you back a little bit to the first part of your brief and introducing yourself, Gary.
Yeah.
When you speak about working with executives and those two particular scenarios that you mentioned, what were some of those things that were being highlighted that the executive saw as challenging?
Okay. Most of the time, the men executives, of course, didn't understand what was happening physically and emotionally to their staff member.
Yeah.
And as you know, not everybody has a bad experience when they're going through menopause. Some women will breeze through it, some women will just cope, and others have a horrendous experience. And it's bad enough to go through that stage of life, but a lot of other people have other stuff going on as well. They might have bipolar problems. They might have depression problems anyway, without all this going on in their lives. So when that loads into the workplace, not only do the men don't understand, but a lot of time the women around them don't understand. They might be too young to experience it and have no idea of what they're going to experience themselves. Or others who didn't have the same experience and say, oh, what's she going on about?
Yeah.
So and management just go, I don't know what's going on here.
So would I be correct in making an assumption that the perception could have been that this particular person was being quite disruptive to the workplace?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was one situation where they banned this woman from coming in.
Wow.
Because she wanted to leave early every day when the flushes got worse early in the afternoon, and she found that she just couldn't cope because she did have other stuff as well. She did have other clinical stuff attached to her, to her being. and the workplace colleagues around them say, no, why should she get special treatment? And this just got exacerbated and exacerbated. So I've done a little bit of workplace mediation in this area, as well as just working one-on-one with people.
Yeah, that's just, so interesting. And I'm going to make the assumption that this probably was an individual that was quite high performing and doing really well, and then something obviously changed physiologically, that then started exhibiting some other symptoms and behaviors that were not necessarily her or
yeah, that's right. And she couldn't understand what was she knew what was going on, but she couldn't understand. And
then the articulation back to the executives as well would have been extraordinarily challenging.
Well, it's almost impossible, to tell you the truth, because the executives, and they don't only have to be men, as I said, they can be women as well, but unless nobody has exactly the same experience. Some people don't have any experience at all. So how a woman in that situation comes to try and explain herself can be exceptionally painful for them.
Yeah, that cone of silence is don't mention the M word.
Yeah. Well, in a clinical sense, when I see people in my practice, they most of them, at that age a lot of them have been, carers. They've been looking after their kids for 20 odd years, and now. And their husband, most of them, for 20 odd years, for 30 years, and then they come out towards the other end of this experience that they're going through, and they're still, and most of them early 50s, late 40s, whatever it is, and they've got a whole life in front of them. And all of a sudden, they think they're not the person they used to be. There's no kids to look after. I've got my husband who I've been looking after for 25 or 30 years. I'm not sure about that. And I've got a whole life still to live.
Yes, so when you take identity.
Yeah, when you take that into the workplace with people who don't understand what's going on, that's a loaded gun.
Yeah, there's so many layers when your body's changing and your life's changing as well. Yeah. So what was your motivation for wanting to be a voice on the topic of menopause?
Oh, look, I'm really privileged to work with these ladies who come in and explain what they're going through to me, a male who hasn't experienced it, obviously, but they're still willing to talk about it. And that's a real privilege. It's an absolute privilege for me to be involved in that side of things. And then those in the workplace that I'm involved with, to try to assist that workplace in going forward and how to cope with it, particularly small businesses, because small businesses, if they've got 10 employees and one of them is going through all this, and that the disruption spreads through half of their employees that they've got, it's a real problem. Larger workplaces, maybe they can hide in the corner somewhere, but it's still going to surface at some stage. But smaller practices, small businesses can bring them down,
Yeah. Interesting. And it's a whole awareness and being supportive. You don't necessarily need to know the intricacies, but if you're aware, then obviously you can start to look at different types of mechanisms to appropriately support. Not only the individual, but the workplace as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Even for where people sit. Some people are jealous because this lady has to be close to an air conditioner. I mean, you can't believe the problems that causes. No, I want to be close to it. The 18-year-old says, why should she get the air conditioner? That stuff. I mean, and that stuff starts this small and finishes up this big. So,
and it just doesn't have to be like that.
That's the stuff we need to talk about and create that awareness, around not only the poor person that's going through it, but those around them in the workplace, and have some empathy.
Yes. Yeah. Great word, empathy. So why do you feel that men need to be included in what is generally, a taboo subject, a sensitive subject, not only for a person that's actually going through menopause, but for males, why do you think they
Well, a
need
lot
to
of
be
the
included?
males are those people that are in a position of power in the workplace. Not only males, of course, but a lot of the males are in that kind of position. So I don't really need them to understand, but I want them to be aware. And I want us to raise the right questions around this topic. Not everybody has an answer for it, a correct answer, but unless we ask the right questions, we'll never get to that stage of providing, sensible workplace outcomes for people.
Yeah, interesting. And from your experience working with some of the clients that you are and have worked with, is there a common thread? And if we just focus, because obviously your clinical practice works with a whole range of different
Yeah,
challenges and traumas, but if we
yeah,
focus on menopause
yeah.
as an example, is there a common theme, is there a common thread throughout some of those conversations and therapy sessions?
No, because everybody is going through other stuff, and other stuff is always different. The
Yeah,
common
okay.
thread is menopause,
Yeah,
which is difficult enough, but it's whatever else you throw in, and the other stuff you throw in is always different.
yeah. And
It might be financial problems, it could be kids off the track, or whatever it is, but it's always a little bit different.
yeah. And it is a really interesting, like I'm 52 and I went through early menopause in my early 40s. And I remember the doctor saying, oh, you're way too young, you're way too young. And yet the levels of anxiety that were in my heart and the heat that would come from my feet to the top of my head
Mm.
and ditching and all sorts of other things. And I thought I
Yeah,
was going crazy. I thought there was
yeah,
something seriously wrong with
yeah,
me,
yeah,
some form of PTSD or whatever
yeah,
the case. And at the time, I was going through a really challenging time with our tech company that
yeah.
we had, and my kids leaving home, and also, like you say, lots of other things were happening.
Mm.
But fundamentally, fast forward, and here I was at 48 and completely gone through perimenopause, menopause without realizing that's exactly what I was going through. So
Mm.
it is a really interesting, I guess, observation in hearing that there is a common thread around menopause, but at that time of life, there's so many other things that are happening
Mm.
that we can place, you know,
Yeah.
the whatever we're going through on that particular issue.
So a question for you: if you had an understanding of what was actually going through you, not a psychological issue, but a physiological issue, what would that have done for you? You think that would have put you in a better space?
Definitely. I think knowing what I know now, physiologically, what was happening to my body and the change of life, it would have instigated implementing whatever the therapy that, like I'm
Mm.
not talking either prescription or natural therapies
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to deal with, particularly the anxiety. The anxiety was worse for me, and I know every woman is different,
Mm.
but it was also the ability to be in a conversation at
Yeah,
an executive level, um, where I could, the that saying about respond, don't react.
Mhm.
Being able to respond with a
Yeah,
clear thinking, because the
yeah, yeah,
brain gets a little bit fuzzy as well, and so
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
react
yeah,
more than actually respond.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's
good
difficult when there's
question.
lots, yeah, and that's hard when there's lots of stuff happening with your body to
Yeah,
learn how to respond rather than react.
yeah,
That's not easy, and
yeah,
that's where people need assistance.
yep,
Whether it's in the workplace or outside of the workplace,
yeah,
understanding how to react, how to lower your thoughts or lower your reaction levels down to a stage where you can start to separate that anxiety a little bit from
yeah,
what the answer it is that you need to deliver.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
that sort of stuff
Yeah,
is where outside therapy is valuable.
yeah. Excellent. So, what do you think of Fiona? You were probably already mentioned a couple of those, but do you think would be a few simple strategies that a workplace could implement to support
Okay,
not
I
only
think,
that person individual as going through the menopause, but the
yeah, yeah,
actual workplace as well?
yeah, sure. I really think unless they an extremely qualified person in-house, that they need a reliable third party that they can refer to, refer their client to, refer their own business organization to, that helps them to come out. And this is not an ad for us or anybody else. I'm just saying, for what I've experienced, most businesses can't do it themselves because they don't have the skills or the understanding to deal with the problem. If they do, then great. But in general, that's not going to happen. And the sooner they can find an external trusted party to come in and help them, then I think they're going to really struggle.
And that's a really important point that you make, Gary, that in terms of educating and creating awareness in the workplace, not even for those that are going through menopause, but the workplace in general and leadership, it's not having the answers and being the, yep, come to me and I'll be your therapist. It's having that awareness and also the connection to external third parties who do have the expertise to be able to support, manage, and provide appropriate therapy. But it's important for the workplace to understand that in the first instance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm starting to work on, as I said, this is not an ad for me or us, but I'm starting to work with a company at the end of this month on a wellness program for themselves, because they want to step outside their own abilities or inabilities and engage an entirely holistic approach to their workplace.
Amazing.
Which is wonderful. And the more that do that in trusted areas, the better.
Yeah, 100%. So this is an ad. On the 26th of February 25, Workplace Village is hosting a professional leadership development opportunity, Breaking the Silence, Menopause, Work and Wellbeing. And it's an intimate session. We're not casting this out to have hundreds and thousands of people. It's an intimate session for 20 only within HR safety or wellbeing, particularly in the mining sector. And because it's only a small group of people, it allows that safe space to be able to have the conversation. Welcome, invite men. We want this to be, a dual gender approach. And not only is that session going to be facilitated by yourself, Gary, but also Catherine Maslin, who is the entrepreneur owner of the Shift Clinic. So love for you all to attend, as in the 20, so get in. What do you think, if we just leave on what would be a compelling reason for people to attend, Gary?
I think the compelling reason is to ask the questions that haven't been asked yet. Make sure that they're the right questions, and let's search for an answer that can be almost revolutionary in the workplace. And I know you've got to speak to Catherine. She's with us, and she's an amazing person in what she does at Shift Clinic, and we work pretty closely together. But I think if we ask the right questions, and start a revolution in the workplace, because there's nothing.
Love it.
And we want to create something here.
Be the change.
Yep.
Yeah, be the disruptor. Amazing. Thank you so much, Gary. Not only was this a very insightful conversation, and I really value your time, but I am super excited about the 26th of February. It's only 3 hours, intimate, and only 20 people. So thank you again, Gary. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
It's a pleasure, Kathy. Cheers.
Okay, thanks. Bye.